How did the ancient Egyptians defeat death? Not with magic, not with miracles, but with knives, salt, ritual, patience, and an obsession with eternity. When we look at a mummy today, wrapped in linen and sealed behind glass, it feels distant, almost unreal, a relic frozen in time. But for the ancient Egyptians, mummification was not a curiosity. It was survival. It was the difference between existing forever or disappearing into nothing. To understand how mummification really worked, you have to step inside their world. A world where death was not an ending, but a dangerous transition. A world where the soul could be lost, confused, or destroyed if the body was not prepared correctly. Every human being, from pharaoh to farmer, carried multiple souls. The Ka, the life force. The Ba, the personality. The Ak, the eternal spirit. These parts needed a physical anchor, a recognizable home. The body was not disposable. It was a vessel for eternity. If the body decayed, the soul could not return. And so the Egyptians learned how to stop decay itself, not symbolically, physically, violently. Mummification began the moment a person died. The clock started ticking. Heat, bacteria, moisture, all enemies of preservation. The body was carried to a special purification tent near the Nile. Priests washed it with sacred water and palm wine. Incense burned in the air. Prayers were whispered, calling protective gods to stand guard. Then the real work began. The body was opened, not gently. A small cut was made on the left side of the abdomen. Through that opening, embalmers removed the organs one by one. The stomach, the intestines, the liver, the lungs. These organs decayed quickly. They had to be treated separately. Each organ was dried, wrapped, and placed inside sacred jars, guarded by protective deities. These jars were not decoration. They were spiritual insurance. The heart, however, stayed inside the body. The heart was memory, identity, judgment. In the afterlife, the heart would be weighed against a feather. If it was too heavy with sin, the soul would be destroyed. The brain did not receive such respect. It was liquefied and pulled out through the nose using metal hooks. To modern eyes, this feels brutal. To the Egyptians, it was necessary. The brain was not considered important for thought or personality. The heart was. Once the body was emptied, it still contained moisture. Moisture meant rot. This is where the real miracle happened. Natron, a naturally occurring salt mixture found in desert lakes. Powerful, dry, ruthless. The body was completely covered and filled with natron, every cavity packed, every surface buried. For 40 days, the body rested inside this white desert of salt. Slowly, relentlessly, every drop of moisture was pulled out. Skin tightened, muscles hardened, facial features collapsed slightly. The human form transformed into something closer to leather than flesh. This was death's pause button, but preservation was not enough. The body had to look human again. After the drying phase, embalmers washed away the salt and began reconstruction. Linen pads filled sunken cheeks and abdomen. Resin sealed the skin. Oil softened brittle surfaces. Artificial eyes restored the face. The dead were rebuilt, not as a corpse, but as a vessel ready for eternity. Then came the wrapping. Hundreds of meters of linen strips wrapped carefully around every finger, every toe, every limb. Amulets were placed between layers. Protective symbols woven into fabric. Spells spoken continuously. This process took weeks, sometimes months. Every layer was a prayer. Every knot was protection. Priests performed the opening of the mouth ceremony, symbolically restoring the mummy's ability to breathe, see, speak, and eat in the afterlife. The body was no longer dead. It was activated. But mummification was not only physical, it was psychological. Families watched their loved ones slowly transform into eternal beings. Grief mixed with hope, fear mixed with faith. Death became structured, controlled, organized. Chaos was held at bay. Not everyone received the same treatment. Pharaohs and nobles received the most elaborate preservation. Gold masks, nested coffins, painted tombs, food, furniture, weapons, jewelry. The poor received simpler burials, sometimes just wrapped in cloth and laid directly into the warm desert sand, letting nature itself complete the drying process. The sun pulled moisture from the body. The wind carried away scent and decay. The earth became the final embalmer. No gold, no painted coffins, no carved prayers on stone, just silence, heat, and time. Yet even in simplicity, the belief remained the same. Preserve the body, preserve the soul. Whether wrapped in royal linen or buried beneath shifting dunes, the goal never changed. The body had to remain recognizable. Identity had to survive the passage into the unknown. And here is the uncomfortable truth. Mummification worked. Thousands of years later, skin still exists. Hair still clings to skulls. Fingernails remain. Teeth sit in their original alignment. Even fingerprints endure, frozen patterns left by hands that once touched sunlight, water, and stone. Ancient hands still hold their shape, fingers curved as if mid-gesture. Ancient faces still whisper identity, cheekbones, jawlines, expressions faintly preserved beneath layers of resin and linen. Science has confirmed what the Egyptians believed emotionally and spiritually. They succeeded in slowing time. Modern scanners can read muscle fibers. DNA can still be extracted. Medical conditions can still be diagnosed thousands of years later. The dead speak through tissue and bone, revealing stories their owners never imagined would be heard again. But this victory came at a price. Mummification was expensive, labor-intensive, resource-heavy. It required trained specialists, ritual priests, craftsmen, linen weavers, resin collectors, salt miners, transport workers, and guards. Every preserved body represented weeks of labor and a complex chain of materials moving across the land. It became an industry, an economy built around death. Entire communities survived by preparing bodies for eternity. Workshops smelled constantly of resin and incense. Linen was cut, folded, stacked, and wrapped endlessly. Natron was mined, transported, crushed, stored. Priests memorized endless prayers and gestures. Embalmers refined techniques passed down through generations. Death fueled life. Families saved money for years to afford a proper burial. Contracts were signed. Services were negotiated. The afterlife had a price tag. And yet, mummification was never a guarantee of safety. Tombs were robbed. Seals were broken in the darkness of night. Gold masks were torn away. Coffins smashed. Amulets ripped from bandages. Bodies dragged into the open and left exposed. Entire dynasties were violated by greed and desperation. Fire destroyed some. Floods damaged others. Sand collapsed chambers and crushed coffins. Eternity was fragile. The promise of forever could be shattered in a single careless moment. And there is something else hidden beneath all of this. The process reveals how deeply the Egyptians feared disappearance. Not just physical death, but erasure, being forgotten, losing their name, losing their story, dissolving into silence as if they had never existed. To be remembered was to remain alive. Mummification was an act of resistance against oblivion, a rebellion against time, a declaration that existence mattered beyond breath, beyond heartbeat, beyond memory. Every wrapped body was a quiet protest against nothingness. But even mummies decay eventually. Salt loses its strength. Linen fibers weaken and crumble. Resin cracks and flakes away. Air finds its way inside sealed chambers. Bacteria returns. Time always finds a path forward. No preservation is truly eternal. And this brings us to the final truth. Mummification was never about cheating death. It was about negotiating with it, about slowing its advance, about delaying the inevitable, about giving humans a fragile sense of control in a universe that offers very little certainty. The Egyptians did not defeat mortality, but they faced it with courage, discipline, imagination, and extraordinary craftsmanship. They studied decay, mastered chemistry without knowing its name, and turned fear into ritual. They transformed death into a process, into a structured journey, into a ceremony filled with meaning, beauty, and intention. They turned death into art, and perhaps that is why we are still fascinated. Because when we stand in front of a mummy, when we look into empty eye sockets that once saw sunlight and shadow, we are not simply looking at ancient history. We are looking into a mirror. We see our fear of vanishing, our hunger for meaning, our desperate desire to be remembered, our longing to leave something behind that proves we existed, wrapped in linen, sealed in silence, waiting for eternity, just like us.